We're good.
Welcome. Thank you for all of those who are joining us here. It's good to see so many people here at USBE, reminding me of the pre-pandemic days when we used to have a lot more people in person. It's appreciated. And thank you for joining us for those of you who are online. We have a nice full meeting again today as usual, so we'll go ahead and get started. The quote this month from the great Ted Lasso, also aka Jason Sudeikis. Taking on a challenge is a lot like riding a horse. If you're comfortable while you're doing it, you're probably doing it wrong. So if you are a fan of Ted Lasso, you probably understand and know that belief sign. We're appreciating the challenge of coming to an end with our assessment windows and wrapping things up, knowing that you probably have a lot of wrapping up that's going on in your locations as well, and looking forward to new challenges coming our way. Just an FYI, we do have our AD meeting schedule posted. It's linked here in the slide deck, but it's posted for the next year. Reminder that we do not have an AD meeting in July, so we'll skip the July month. All of the other AD meetings will be the third Thursday as usual, with the exception of the October meeting. Many people have fall break during that week, the third week, and so we've moved that AD meeting to October 23rd, which will be the fourth Thursday. Everyone else, every other month will be that third Thursday, but that schedule is linked on our website. And then just a couple of updates. We did have the rule R277497 about school accountability systems passed in our May board meeting. There was really minor update. The only reason that rule came into being was that it came to the board meeting for review was that it had been 5 years since it had been posted, and we have a policy to review rules as we haven't used them for a while. So we reviewed that rule. The only thing that was changed was there was some language that had the specific website where the accountability tech manual was posted. And if you've ever tried to access things on the USBE website, you understand that links break often, so we didn't want to put a specific link in the board rule, so we just changed the language to say posted on the USBE website, that the accountability tech manual will be posted instead of the specific URL address that will be posted at. So it was a minor change, it passed through. We also had on our consent calendar our contract with the Center for Assessment, that they work as a support for USBE in the assessment department, and that contract was approved. We have a lot of items coming up on the June board meeting. We have R277632, which is the board rule that was created after the passage of HB 42, which was the funding for an influx of ML students in a school. So that language will be on the June board meeting, and they'll be discussing that rule. And then we have contracts that will be on the consent calendar for our WIDA contract, our DLM contract extension, and then we're hoping that we'll have our contract with NGT, an amendment for the A2A portion that we'll be talking a little bit more about the options for schools for participating in that. That one, we are not quite sure if that will make it on the June board meeting, so it may be pushed to August, but we're hoping that it will be on June. A couple of updates as well. We have our TAC meetings and APAC meetings coming up next week. Our TAC meetings, for the first time in a long time with our technical advisors, we don't actually even have either of our vendors attending because we're talking solely about growth. We'll talk about growth measures on our accountability assessments and the way that Utah calculates SGPs. It was a request from our UOD group to take a look at growth and how we calculate growth and what we do. So we'll be discussing that. We'll also be discussing growth with our Acadience measures. The vendors and creators of Acadience will be there talking about their pathways of progress. And then we'll be discussing more about our English language proficiency assessment and the growth that's associated with that assessment. So a lot about growth with our technical advisors. And then later in the week when we work with the policy advisors, again, talking quite a bit more about growth, continuing that ELP growth discussion. And then our Utah SGP discussion with our policy advisors. And then finally, we're also getting policy on our entry-exit criteria for the WIDA ALT. So you'll have that. I know that's something that people have been waiting for as we have kids that are wondering about entry or wondering about exit without WIDA ALT. So we'll be hopefully nailing that down at the APAC meeting later next week. Any questions on upcoming meetings or topics? And then if you think of things that you would love our technical advisors or policy advisors to weigh in on, we appreciate that you have brought up the growth discussion to take a look at that. And if there are other topics or pieces of interest that you are interested in our technical advisors or our policy advisors to weigh in on, please reach out and let us know. We're happy to look into any other topics for the future as well. One additional update I don't have a slide for, but I just wanted to give a heads up. We mentioned in the last couple of meetings about the plan to move forward with an RFP for our 9th and 10th grade assessment. That actually posted yesterday, last night that went live. So we have a couple of weeks that that'll be open. Our vendors have a month or so, or not our vendors, but any vendor that's choosing to submit a bid will have about a month. And then we have a few people from our assessment directors, a few internal people that will be reviewing and scoring that RFP for a contract for the 9th and 10th grade. So we should have that finalized by like end of June. So as soon as we're able to announce what happens, what the outcome is with that contract, we'll make sure to keep everyone aware of the process and the outcomes. Hal, yeah, thank you. Can we get a link to RFP? Yeah, I'll make sure we get that from our purchasing people, and I can send that in the link in the chat here and later in the meeting. Any other questions on policy or other upcoming topics? Okay, well, I'll keep watching the chat. And then Brittany was going to talk about a couple of school accountability things.
Yeah, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. So I am just going to quickly go over a couple of updates to the school report card timeline. So Em, if you want to go ahead and advance the slide. Our RISE standards review results are projected to be back in September, which means that USBE is projected to receive those ELA results from RISE in October. We'll get those SGPs to you in November. And this is the biggest update, is that our school report cards are now going to be available for LEA embargoed review January 5th through the 20th. And then our public release will be January 27th. So hopefully all of the things go smoothly. That is what we are all planning for. If anything changes, of course, we will update you to that. And then if you want to advance the slide one more time. So at our last meeting, it was reiterated that those RISE writing and ELA summative test scores are going to be delayed. And so a lot of you had asked, does that mean the SGPs or the student growth percentiles for math and science are going to be delayed as well? So we talked to our data and statistics team, and they agreed to get those to you as soon as they can. So they are projected to be released August 29th. So August 29th is going to be our first release of that SGP data, and then you'll get the ELA SGPs in November. If you have questions about any of that, feel free to contact me, and I'd be happy to help answer any questions that you have.
Okay, test administration. Not a lot in this one, but first off, a thank you for those who opened up their schools and let us come and visit. Had some really good visits, had an opportunity in one of the schools to actually sit down with some high school students and get some direct feedback from them, which was very interesting, having that back and forth question and answering time. And it was interesting to see as they learned more about the test from their administrator, how they went from, well, we don't like this part of the test, but when they explained why they do the test that way, they're like, oh, then don't change that, right? You should keep it that way. That transparency really helped them out a lot in understanding why they're testing out with UA Plus the way that they are at that school. a lot of suggestions on how to improve our protocols for next year. We're looking forward to implementing some of those in terms of scripting on the TAM and other things. So get some interesting results when you interview students and teachers. The most common answer for what you like about UA Plus from students was, we like the timer. The most common answer what we don't like about the test from the teachers is, we don't like the timer. Okay, I can see both perspectives on that, but the ones that actually gave a little bit more feedback actually said it was nice to know that the test was going to be finishing with a short period of time, and it actually made the testing time feel shorter, made the day feel shorter. And I thought, well, I'd never heard that before. Usually people panic when they see the timer. I know I do. So some interesting feedback. And so also some concerning feedback from teachers, things like, depending on RISE or UA Plus, between 37 and 40% of the teachers that responded to the survey do not know your protocols for what to do if there's a security breach. And they happen. We've had had it happening this year, but the fact that many don't know what to do was a little concerning. But we're still going through a lot of data. We got over 550 student responses alone, which is fantastic. And analyzing that data, and hopefully next month we'll be able to give you some updated ideas of what some of those responses were. Next slide. Some reminders of what you got coming up for June. A lot of it's just to finalizing all that assessment data, and we got some updates on secure browsers coming out. We'll see some announcements on those soon. We just heard about them ourselves. And so there's your reminders for what's coming up in June. A date that you might want to get on your calendars right now, we're calling it the Assessment Director Roundup. It's August 14th, so hopefully before a lot of you start school. Trying to find a date in August is becoming more and more problematic as more and more schools are starting sooner. We're hearing that some are starting in July. Wow, that's early. But we're looking at just a couple of hours of the roundup to, get acquainted with the tests, the systems, the schedule events and things that are happening, some changes that are happening. It used to be called the new AD meeting. But we're finding that a lot of people like yourselves who have been here a long time, things change, procedures change, things get updated, and there might be an opportunity just for us to sit back for a couple of hours and get some questions answered and get you some updates on what's going to be happening for the next year, make some connections with our staff, and then we'll go on from there. So I'm looking forward to actually sitting down for just a couple hours on that time for you. So I think that might be all I got. But, yeah, right questions. It's already half the solution of a problem. So asking the right questions, I'm finding, especially in my new job, helps me out. And so if you have any questions, you got my email. Happy to get into any questions from you at any time.
Is it in person or virtual?
Yes, it's in person. We're looking at virtual for the roundup, as far as I know. We haven't planned anything in person, but we do want to make sure we record it because we know it's the beginning of the school year and some of you might not be able to make those dates. You might have other meetings to go to, so we'll make sure we at least get it recorded.
All right, that's me. I am happy to announce we are going to have a new opportunity for the Assessment to Achievement project this fall in partnership with MGT. We are calling this Assessment to Achievement with Artificial Intelligence. So we are taking the program as it stands with our principles that are founded in good instruction, data use, and collaboration practices to improve student achievement. And we're going to infuse those principles with artificial intelligence to improve efficiency, accuracy, and innovation at the school level. We are going to have up to 12 schools that can apply. I shouldn't say apply. We can have many apply, but we can accept up to 12 schools for this program. It will be a 3-year opportunity as we get started this fall. I'll go ahead to the next slide, Em. This is a little bit of a breakdown of what to expect within the program. We are starting the first 6 months-ish with leadership support. So this is going to be very specific to supporting principals and school leaders as they start the project. And we'll have a kickoff meeting in September. And we'll talk about how to individualize your leadership coaching, we'll have more tailored experiences with our coaches within the leadership support program. And then starting in January, we bring in your school teams, and that will be up to the school level to decide who gets to be part of those school teams that we bring in. And to what you expect, there are quarterly professional learning sessions with that school team in conjunction with USBE and our MGT consultants, and regular coaching support throughout the 3 years of the project. Next slide, please. Just a couple quick overviews here. When does it start? Right now, we are planning the kickoff meeting to be in September of 2025, and that again is for principals and school leaders. And then our school teams join in January of 26. The participation of the project is completely covered as far as funding is concerned. Schools do not pay anything to be part of this project. This is a legislatively funded program, and so we will have the program cover any substitute reimbursements to your LEA, mileage reimbursements for those who are traveling, and stipends for educators who are participating off their contract time. And once again, this is for 3 years, and we are funded for up to 12 schools to join this cohort. Next slide, please. If you are interested and want to know more information, we have a link and a QR code here that takes you to a form that you can fill out. There's no commitment in this form. It's just a form of interest to learn more and schedule a time with MGT and USBE to talk about the details. There's also a link to a one-pager where you can pull that up and either print it yourself or disseminate electronically to any of the schools in your LEA. And there is Lindsay Martinez's email address with MGT. She's their point of contact for this program if you have further questions beyond what those flyers cover. I think that's it for me.
Already, wow. I'm just answering my email over. That was great assistant rostering. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so I'm currently working on the state data validation for WIDA. It goes until May 27th. So if you find that you have students with multiple test reports, like the writing on one report, all the rest of their scores on another report, just let me know their SSIDs. I'll get those results merged, so you get one complete report for your students. And once I complete my state data validation, new reports will be posted in WIDA AMS on June 12th. Next slide. All right, Acadience data. This year, since we've moved all the kindergartners over to Acadience, we'll need to have those results reported to us for kindergartners. I talked to your SIS people at the LEA data meeting last month about this. I'll be talking to them again next week at this month's LEA data meeting. So you just need to know we need that data. If it's not possible for your SIS to submit that to us in your UTREC submission, then we have 2 templates for you to submit that data to us via MOVEit, your early numeracy and your regrade level indicators. If you use Aspire SIS, you win the prize. You don't have to do anything. They're already doing this, so enjoy your summer. You don't have to do it. Also, just a small note about Utah Fits All students and Acadience data. If you have those students in ALO, you'll need to grant whoever needs to print out their score reports just a few permissions in ALO so they can see those results. Oh, yes, a question.
Question online. The assessment report to check who has filled that out does not include kindergarten classes.
Send me an email with a few more details and I will get it sorted out. Okay, next slide. Okay, so you may have noticed that there's a bit of an issue with Tide, that there are students hanging around there that have transferred out of your school. There are also some 1% students in there, and we have some students that have switched classes, but they're still showing on the roster for their old classes. We definitely know about this issue. It is on the Tide side. We're all doing everything right, so there's no worries there. They asked for a little bit more time to try to find the source of this issue, but they have until tomorrow. We've given them that deadline. As soon as they get to the end of tomorrow, they are going to manually remove students from your school. So next week, you should see everybody gone that is there incorrectly. Yes, Emily.
So the follow-up to the other comment.
Oh, okay,
is, on Aspire, there is a report to see who filled out the ROGL report.
Oh, okay.
And that is the one that does not include kindergarten classes.
Okay, so unfortunately, I cannot help with Aspire SIS, so you'll have to put in a ticket.
Leonard.
And then there's another comment.
Okay, yes?
They're popping up now. Okay, just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. If we have Aspire, do we still need to enter ROGL status in Aspire?
Yes.
For Acadians?
In Aspire, these are things that are sent to us via Utrecht submission. So you still need to, I apologize, I did not say that very well. You still need to enter them into Aspire, but you don't have to take any extra steps in the reporting to USB of those indicators.
Because the people who don't have that option in their SIS system have to send us a spreadsheet
Yes.
securely of, yes, my students met that or not. And the other codes besides just ROGL of
The reading
preventive
intervention, yes.
et cetera.
By next year, I'm going to have all this down and it won't be necessary.
And then switching over to the current topic
Yes.
with Tide. Inside the Tide discrepancy report, we currently see all science tests listed as not completed, but we can see the test completed in reports.
And I know Elise has talked to CAI about this issue,
Mm-hmm.
and I can say they're working on it.
Yep.
Yes, Christine.
Yeah, so can I clarify? So the ones that you're saying, like if they have an exit date in Data Gateway, right? Like they're not in our school anymore. Those
Yes.
are the ones that are going to get cleared up based on our Utrecht data that we
Yes.
send that they've unenrolled.
Yep. I compiled a list of everybody in the whole
So I don't
state.
need to send you anything.
Nope.
It should all be there.
Yep. I've done a list. I'm going to refresh it and do a brand new list tomorrow of everyone that's transferred out but is still in Tide. It's about 3,000 students right now.
That's why I've got so many questions. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Still, it's only small. We have about 300,000 students, so, a small percent, but it's very obvious to everyone that it's an issue, so we're going to get that cleared up. All righty, next slide. Oh, I'm done. So resources. So, I wrote these slides. I don't know why they're so surprising. All right, so I have a new little file that I've added to my resources. It's a long title. Utah Assessment Accountability Expectations for SOEP Providers. It outlines the responsibilities of SOEP schools when it comes to assessing their students. It is very informative. It does need a small update. I'm trying to figure out who wrote it so that I can have it updated. But it's got a lot of really good information. Thank you, Christine, for pointing out that to us because it's great. So it's on my list now. Yes, Emily.
Question from online. When is the early numeracy and reading K reports due to USPE?
It's their end of years. June 15th is when the data entry deadline is for Acadians. All right. And that's it for me.
There's nothing playing.
Oh.
That's disappointing.
What do you need me to sing? Full
On
song
the
and dance
dance
ready.
Oh, we have the Beatles.
All of that work in preparation for
Can you
nothing.
sing help?
Help! Is there anybody? Help!
Thanks, Elise.
As possible.
Okay, well, since that didn't work, we can move on to the next slide.
Oh!
Try it out.
We need this to stick in everyone's brains.
You click on
Do I have to click on it?
Yeah.
There's an ad.
Oh.
because it's not yet.
Okay, we'll just have Elise keep singing.
There you go.
That's okay. Everyone's gonna remember it regardless, right?
Okay, back to this. That didn't work as well.
We tried.
We had a great.
Sorry.
It's okay. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so we've talked about this a lot. We talked about it last meeting as well. We did get clarification from CAI or from RISE that we need 1,000 responses per writing prompt. So that's good news because we thought that it was a little bit less. This is for the benchmark build test for writing. So we need 1,000 responses per writing prompt. So those are our current numbers up on the screen. 5th grade is crushing it. So thank you to 5th grade teachers. Please reach out and tell your 5th grade teachers thank you so much.
5th grade will have writing benchmarks next year.
Yes. Right now, 5th grade is the only grade that will have writing benchmarks. So
7th grade will have one.
Argumentative.
one, one argumentative. Yes. So there's our current numbers, where we're currently standing. I would like to say that these numbers have dramatically increased in the last week. So thank you again for sending out information to teachers and asking them to participate in this. Next slide, please. But we still, please need your help. Please do everything you can to ask teachers to give these assessments. They can still give the failed test after they've taken their summative writing assessment or their summative ELA assessments. It's open until June 6th. It's a really great end of year activity. Please encourage teachers to be giving these field tests so that way we can use them for next year. I think they'll be a really valuable resource, but if we don't have enough responses to get the data and responses that we need, we won't be able to have them as a resource next year. So please.
And we'll be begging you in the fall to. We understand it's a big ask because they don't get a report after they administer, but hopefully it will be a good academic task as they're trying to fill some time, maybe the last couple of weeks of school.
And worth it in the long run.
Ditch that movie, write an essay.
Yes.
Yeah, this is what Dallas and I look like behind the scenes.
My 12-year-old would be really, really not happy about that, just saying.
Yeah.
He is so ready. RISE testing is coming to an end and it's like summer break mode.
Listen, you gotta keep those kids doing stuff so the teachers don't go crazy. And we really want this as a resource for you all next year. Otherwise, we have to start over from scratch. We are happy to say that 7th grade will have one prompt. 5th grades met their requirements, but all the other grades, just, whatever. Dallas and I will come and do a song and dance, whatever it's gonna take. We need help.
Elise will come sing.
Elise will come sing. We'll bring donuts.
That will make them want to write.
all the ages.
That's all we have for our benchmark updates, but just we are begging, please help us out.
Yep. All right, we've got a bit to go through today, so here we go. Contact information, of course, reach out, which a lot of you have. So our access date reminders, if you
sent your materials in late. The late reporting is going to start, I want to say on the 23rd is going to be the first batch. Yeah, May 23rd, for the first batch of late scoring or materials received. The great news is that you should have received all of your district and student reports electronically in AMS on the 1st. And then starting tomorrow, you will get the printed reports. So they will either be shipped Friday or Monday. They will not try to deliver on the weekend. Just make sure that someone's there to sign for them. And the reports are delivered to your district or the schools, however you have that set up with us and with DRC and AMS. And again, just as Maureen said, we are in the midst of our data validation at the state level. So anything that y'all missed in your LEA level data validation, as you get those score reports in, please submit those to Maureen. Again, no names, just SSIDs. And we are going to say the 26th, please have them all to her by the 26th because that file's due back on the 27th. So just, anything that you're noticing, we'll try to get to the bottom of it. If you're missing scores and you're like, they're just not there, odds are it was a bubbling error. And we've seen that crop up. I always say, bubble, bubble, bubble. Please make sure that you're doing your bubbling correctly. And every year we always get the, well, I did a check mark or a slash. That's not a bubble, my friends. I'm sorry. So we've already had schools that are not getting reports because of incorrect bubbling. So if you happen to be one of those schools, reach out and we can work with DRC. It is hefty cost. It's $300 per test to have those rescored and redone and transcribed with the correct bubbles. So I would just always make sure and encourage your test administrators to make sure that they practice their case bubbling. Okay? Because it's a costly mistake. So again, just reach out and we will get to the bottom of any scoring issues. All right. Okay, there, as always, every year there are technical enhancements to the platform. They're always updating it. So next week, and there was an error, it said Tuesday, May 19th. It's actually Tuesday, May 20th next week, that there will be a free webinar to go over all the changes that you can expect for this next testing season starting in July for screeners and then later on for access. I really highly suggest that you get there so you can ask questions, but if you cannot make it to this webinar, they're always recorded and they're posted in the secure portal for you to go back to. I'd say the biggest thing that you would want to know with this one is just compatible systems, right? And making sure that you have that information up to date. So when you do all your updates over the summer to all your student computers and testing devices that you know what's going to be compatible or not. Next. All right, so I feel like we're living in this world of assessment revisions and everything. So the regular access is undergoing a revision. So this is just our access online. And there's a link, so if you want more information on the revision, you can read more about that. But really the purpose for revising access is to make sure that the revised ELD standards, the 2020 edition, are incorporated. Those standards didn't change a ton, but they changed enough that we have to revise some things in access. The good news is that WIDA's been working on this for a couple years since the standards revision. Alternate access, that is complete and it is operational now. So that part's done. Kindergarten access, That was actually just field tested this spring, and I want to give a big shout out to the LEAs that participated in that Kinder Access field test this year. So that means next year, the new revised Kinder Access is going to be operational. And also the Access online field test, that happened this year as well. Those field test items were embedded in the regular Access online. It will undergo a standard setting next summer, not this summer, but the following summer. But if we go to the next slide, the good news is, oh, this was back to Kindergarten Access. This was my big thank you. Thank you. So now I'm like, oh, I threw myself off.
Can we go back to the other one?
No, it's okay. With the redesigned Kindergarten Access, there are going to be updates to the test administration trainings, but not much. And those test administration trainings will be updated at the end of September. And just remember, test administrators, they need to do those trainings annually because there's always changes. So now, next, back to our changes. The great news is with the regular online 1 through 12 is that it's going to be a typical, even though it's revised, it's going to be a typical testing experience, and the test administrators, that will remain the same. There will be updates to the training courses, and you will get score reports on time, so that is fantastic. They will not be delayed. But because that's not, the score reports won't be delayed, we will have to provide you with guidance until the new standard setting takes place, and we'll have to do some crosswalks and concordance tables for exiting. We still have a while, but I just want to give you a heads up that next spring things will be a little wonky when it comes to exiting because we will have to be using some concordance tables, but we will walk you through it all, okay? And so if you like concordance tables, yay. All right. So again, this one's big. The TA training courses are going to be massively updated. In the past, some of the trainings were able to be combined, but some of those now, because of the revision to a lot of the assessments, they're going to be separated out. So when you go into the secure portal, you'll see separate trainings. So just make sure that you are certifying your test administrators correctly. And you can check to see if you have that LEA level account for WIDA, the WIDA secure portal. You can check to make sure people are taking the correct trainings for the tests that they're administering. If, let's say, you don't have any kinders in your LEA, you don't need anyone to do that TA training. Only do the ones that you're going to actually be giving, okay? So all of those will be coming out in the fall as well. Okay, reminders for screening. You can start screening for kinders and online starting July 1st. And just remember that for the remainder of this year, the few weeks that we have left, if a student does enroll in the home language survey, indicates that you need to screen the student. You still need to screen the student within 10 school days of this year. But for anything next year, for the fall enrollment, you can start on July 1st, okay? So in the fall, remember that you'll have 30 calendar days at the beginning of the school year. After those 30 days, it drops down to 10 school days. And again, we really want to encourage, make sure that your test administrators are doing those trainings, and also make sure that you are updating your SIS as you screen those students, okay? Because that's super, super important. We pull all of our information for who needs to be tested, for access, who counts as EL, for all those counts. from your SIS through UTREX.
Megan, so 2024-25 school year, you're talking our district school year, not something that the state has a deadline for. So if our school ends on, let's say, the 22nd, then we're done for the year.
So you end in 7 days?
No, 23rd. 23rd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lucky you.
Yeah, so does that consider the
So
end of
many.
2024?
Yeah,
This
so
criteria?
2024, so if your last day is the 22nd and you have someone enroll today, you would still need to screen them, you know?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying that.
Yep. Any other questions about screening? Okay, and then more screener stuff. The alternate screener is going to be released this fall. Again, we talked about this in our last meeting. We are going to have more guidance coming and we'll be announcing and blasting out to everyone. The new alternate screener training course is going to be released on July 1 as well. And everything is free to download from the secure portal, and you can just print them locally. One question that we do quite often get is, well, we want the color ones and it costs a lot to do color. Based on all the field tests and the studies and the COG labs they've done associated with these tests, they have found that students do not perform any differently, whether it's in color or black and white. So if you really, really want to print the color ones or get professionally printed ones, those ones are at the cost of your LEA. Otherwise, it's all available for free to print from the secure portal. We are in the midst of determining an alternate entrance criteria. Okay, so stay tuned because we're working on that with our TAC and APAC right now. As soon as we have that nailed down, we will again provide all the guidance that you will need for administering an alternate screener. Tracy, what would you like to add here?
Yeah, so again, this is available July 1. So I'm going to remind you kind of where we've landed with that guidance. Had lots of thought processes through this, conversations with other WIDA states. Alternate assessments regardless, including this one, are for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities as identified by an IEP team. So if you have students that move in with that information existing for a team to use to determine significant cognitive, it can move forward with the alternate screener. If you have students coming in from another country, right, that land, you're required to screen them before they will be through an initial eligibility process. Okay? If the team feels like the alternate screener is the most appropriate route, you will fill out an exceptional request form with that information submitted to me. Does that make sense? That's the process, as simple as that. So the participation criteria doesn't change. With that caveat, we know that you'll have some kids that may not have that information to make that determination, right? And then we have to be really cautious. Does that make sense? So we'll get something kind of documented in place, but really that participation criteria holds. Does that make sense? I'm looking at my folks here. Okay.
Do we have a sense of when we will know what those alternate entrance criteria are?
We're hoping after our next APAC meeting. So
Thank you.
May,
Yeah, the end is what's next week would be, and then if they vote on it at that point, then those I think we could share out pretty,
yeah.
So it should be in place before next school year.
Yes, and
Yes.
even at the end of this school year,
Yeah.
depending on how early you're in this.
Yeah. If things go the way that we hope it goes with our recommendations, then actually it could be put in place pretty quickly because it wouldn't require an SM amendment also. So.
And on the conservative side, right, like, knowing the group of kids that we've got going here involved in this, and we have absolutely no data on it, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we talked about was if we set, and that's something that we'll talk about with APAC and TAC next week as well, but with, we wanted to say, like Tracy said, on the conservative side, because we would where we don't have specific data yet, we would hate to set a cut that was lower than maybe we would after we get data and end up exiting or not entering students that would have been or should have been maybe provided services. So the criteria will probably be on the conservative side and then revisited once we have more data to look at what it actually looks like and impact.
And the alternate screener items, the alternate screener really should only take 20 to 30 minutes to give. But all of the items were actually field tested with alternate access. So there's data for access, but just not now screener wise that we collected as a state. They've all been field tested with this population. Lots of changes, good times. All right. And then we have a couple remaining training opportunities. Just please note that if you have any educators in your LEA doing the self-paced online trainings through the WIDA Secure Portal, those will roll over at the end of August, and the new ones will be available on the 1st of September. We will announce all of the trainings for next year very soon. But the great news is that those self-paced ones we will still have, but it will be increased up to 12 different courses that are free for all educators in the state of Utah. And then we still have our summer courses that are still open for enrollment that we'll be hosting along with WIDA as well. And again, contact information with really helpful websites. A lot of times questions that we get can be just answered right from those websites, so take a look at them. But now we're actually going to get into the access data. One of the asks from a lot of LEAs and ADs is we would love more training on the data and the reports that we're getting. So as you know, last week and this week we've started to get all of our reports, okay? I thought I was ahead of you. No, you're okay. So just as a reminder, for our testing ethics policy, reports need to be provided to students and parents and teachers within 3 weeks of receiving those test scores, okay? Every LEA is a little different on how they interpret this 3 weeks, just really dependent on their technology or printing capabilities. So some start those 3 weeks because they're like, we can just put this into our SIS and get this information out to parents and everything. Or so they start their 3-week countdown from the 1st, and then some are like, nope, we have to do this paper. So they start their 3-week countdown starting either tomorrow or Monday when they get it. So that's going to be up to you where you are going to start counting those 3 weeks, but you do need to share those reports with students, parents, and teachers within 3 weeks. And as part of that as well, there are tons and tons of resources that I've linked here. So there's the website for school reports. One great one, because part of the requirement is when you send the school reports out, they need to be able to be interpreted by the parents and have them be able to understand what it means. So WIDA actually provides a lot of guidance for parents on how to interpret the reports in multiple languages. So you can click on that second one and get an explanation that can be sent home to parents in whatever preferred language they want. And then there's the same also for alternate access as well. So exiting students, please remember now the exit criteria, which was updated back in 23, is an overall composite score of 4.2 or higher and a speaking score of 3.5 or higher. Both of those have to be met, okay, to exit a student. So I had one LEA say, well, they got a 3.4 in speaking. Can I exit them anyways? No, you can't.
I know. It has to be this or higher, okay? And again, the alternate exit criteria is coming soon. So this is just regular online access exiting. And again, we will announce as soon as we get things approved, the alternate exit criteria. That one, again, it might take a little longer because that one will require an ESSA amendment, which has to first be approved by our board and then by the U.S. Department of Education. Now, one of the rules, and this is in our Utah Consolidated State ESSA plan, is when a student exits, the LEA needs to initiate a teacher-student-parent conference within 30 days. So, and that is going to be a conference where you discuss what monitoring is and how you plan on supporting the student during that monitoring period to ensure that an academic English language barrier does not exist and that they're still able to access all their content learning, okay? So make sure that you are scheduling those. Some LEAs are like, it's going to be really hard because the end of the school year is coming. These do not have to be in-person conferences. You can do virtual conferences. And if you are trying to reach out to parents and they're being, non-responsive, just document that, hey, we have tried to initiate this conference. We've sent home all of the paperwork, the scores that they're exiting, the annual exit, the exit letter. Just document that you are trying to initiate the conference, and then you won't have any issues with compliance or anything like that. And if you can't get them till the fall because the parents are non-responsive, then that's what you'll have to do. And also, please make sure that you're updating your SIS to show that these students are now exited from EL status and they are in monitoring for 4 years, okay? And next, these are the links to your exit notification letter. So we have these translated into many different languages. The top link is the English one. And then if you want all the other languages, just go to the Forms tab and you can find and download the different languages. A lot of LEAs say, do we have to use this exact form, whether it be the HLS, the annual, right, the exit? No, but you have to use the verbiage. So if you want to put your own personal, LEA logos and personalize it to your LEA, go for it, but it does need to have the language that we have on the forms on our website.
We do have some comments.
Okay. In Aspire, I don't see anywhere to mark the monitoring status. Oh, goodness. Things are
Yeah, they're coming
skipping
in.
up.
They're addressing it for you. Looks
Okay.
like they're answering it.
I'm so sorry. I don't know all the different SIS and what to mark it and where. I would say reach out if you are a school or an LEA that uses the state's Aspire SIS, reach out to the help desk and they can tell you exactly where to put this. But there should be, once you exit, you should know that the student's going to be in monitoring. I'm not sure why they wouldn't have something to mark as monitoring. And Selena, thank you for jumping in there. Looks like more people are helping. The links don't appear to be active in the slides.
Yeah, I've tried it, and what I do is I right click on the link and then it says link options, and then I can select that and open.
Yep, you might have to do control as well. And some,
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, if you're in PowerPoint.
So if you're following along, do the right click. And what, Jared?
Control click.
Options.
Yeah, they work.
Okay, and then,
Control click if you're within PowerPoint.
okay, or control click.
Yeah,
Is that a
and then
control
one of the options in that link options is to open.
Okay.
All right. All right. Okay, so let's talk about reports. That's your Yana again. Everything right now is available in AMS. Your final reports will be released on June 12th. Okay, so after we fix everything, you'll have your final reports in AMS on the 12th. What you have in AMS right now is you have your individual student reports, or ISRs, and then you have a student roster report, you have a frequency report, and a district file. On the bottom, again, if you follow the instructions on how to open up our links, you can also access the reporting services guide so you know how to download all of these different reports because reporting has changed in AMS. So let's talk about these different report types. Data Gateway as well will have those, but not till August. Okay, we have to get the final file and then we have to do the cleanup and then we'll put them in the Data Gateway. But you should be able to see screener data if you do it by student lookup. Okay, so in AMS, frequency reports. Okay, this is an overview of a large group's performance and you can download these either at the school or the district level, okay? And this is what they look like. If we go to the next one, you'll see a little more zoomed in, which doesn't help my eyesight at all. But there is no individual student information on the frequency reports, but this is kind of your 30,000 foot view of patterns that you can start to see at the different grade levels and the domains that maybe they have a lot of strengths at or the areas where growth is probably needed. So it's broken up normally by grade level. And again, you can do this at the school or the district level to start seeing patterns for your own students in your LEAs. Again, large overview of where your school is at. Next report. We have the ISRs, the individual student reports. This is the one where you're going to focus in on a single student or when you're discussing student progress with parents. Okay, so this is what they look like coming from AMS. And then a blown up view of this. Remember that when you're discussing individual students, and this is just a good reminder in general for all of our educators of our MLs to know, is that not every domain is weighted the same, right? So the reading and writing is weighted more heavily than our speaking and listening. And so you can see how the different composite scores are arrived at. And so I think a lot of times people are like, well, they did really well in listening. Why don't they have a higher score? Because it only counts for 15% of that overall level, right? So you'll want to look at the different domains and just remember how they're weighted. Next. So with this student, this is a student sample. This isn't a real one, promise. This is an example of a fourth grade student, and you can see their different scores broken down. And what they would have gotten, this student would not have exited this year if this were the case because they only got an overall 3.6 and their speaking was a 2.5. So remember, it's a 4.2 overall or higher and a 3.5 in speaking or higher. And so when I do a data dive with this student, here we go. There are a lot of resources. When I want to think about the instructional implications, right, I want to look at the can-do descriptors, and they are now the key uses addition. So these are both linked. The can-do descriptors for all the grades are linked there. And then the image is a link to the actual 4-5. So with this student, I'm going to see that the student has really strong writing skills, but an area of growth that this student would benefit from is really focusing in on their listening. That's their lowest. I will say this example is pretty much the exact opposite of what we see in Utah though. Normally our highest domain is listening, which, that says a lot. That means that students are still getting a lot of that sit and get instruction in class, doing a lot of listening. And so when you look at that frequency report, if you see that pattern, then that tells you something, right? But if I go into my can-do descriptors, and what am I going to do for this student in particular? Go ahead and click. If I really want to work on this student's listening, okay, this would be on page 6 for listening. Then I know that this student's at a level 2. And these are the things at the level 2 that the students can do in class. And so what is a reasonable goal for just listening? Well, that level 3. So if I want to move a student up from a level 2 to a level 3, then what supports and scaffolds do I need to put in place for that student to get to level 3? That's where the instruction is going to be taking place for this student if I want to really help bolster their listening, academic English listening. So what can I use and leverage? This is what the student can do. And then what do I need to put in place instructionally to get them to that next level? So we are hoping that teachers, and this is very like fire hose and broad overview, but we want teachers to do data dives like this, right? And when they're setting goals for their students, that goal for just listening should be moving into that 3, and we need to make sure that we have strategies to help them get to that 3, okay? If you ever want us to do data dives with your teachers and PLCs or anything like that, we are happy to come in and walk them through this. All of these resources that I'm sharing with you, they're all free for you all the time, okay? So again, breaking it down, don't just look at overall composites for a student. You've got to dive down into those domain levels to really say, where does this student need support and where does instruction lie? Okay. So please let us know again how we can help you. Are there any other questions when it comes to the reports available to you all right now? Wow. I hope I didn't put everyone asleep. Good job. Thank you. Awesome. Well, reach out. Reach out. Okay.
Okay, now I'm gonna really put y'all to sleep. Megan and I were tasked with doing some reporting stuff for WIDA and DLM, so that's why you're getting some in-depth today. Okay, dynamic learning maps. So that really should probably say window is closing, but we close June 6th. Or for most of you, you should be done with testing, right? Because you really should have been done a couple weeks before school came to an end. Some caveats there. So next. Here's your to-do list that needs to happen now. Between now and that July 1 date is when we roll our system over. We want to make sure testing is completed. Have you been checking progress? What's still out there? What's going on? Have you entered special circumstance codes for those students that did not participate? And I know some of you are. I've been getting some emails. Now is a great time before that July 1 to also clean up users before that system rolls over. So if you have teachers that you know are going to no longer be with you or retiring, you can go in and start deactivating, removing teachers if they no longer need access to that. But definitely have that done by July 1 before that rolls over. So whatever's existing in DLM on that date is what will show up next year. And then download all of your data extracts and reports. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that. So that's your kind of to-do list to finish up with DLM. Okay, go ahead, next slide, Em. All right, here's where we are with testing progress at the state level. So we still have 163 students who are rostered in DLM that do not have first contact surveys. Some of y'all have 7 days left of school. So that means we have 163 kiddos that at this point may have that anticipated to take DLM. And if they don't have a first contact survey completed, they can't get a testlet and you can't enter special circumstance codes. We are aware that there is an issue with exiting students out of DLM appropriately, meaning something's not working as we expected. If you go in and you look at those students and you see students that should not be in DLM, like, hey, they've exited our school, they've moved, please email me those SSID numbers so I can get those students manually removed from you. Does that make sense? So some of our 163 kiddos kind of hanging in there maybe shouldn't be in DLM, but there's kind of this perpetual issue with not exiting students 100% off of some of that SCRAM record, that special ed record exit stuff like we're hoping. So please just email me those SSIDs and I can get that taken care of really quickly. So you can see here where we're at with our students still not rostered. So this was as of, I think I finished my slides. I was a naughty girl and didn't have them fully done last week. This was like beginning of this week. We still had 127 students not rostered for ELA, and this was amongst 36 LEAs. So you can kind of look down the list here. So there's a chunk of you out there that have students in DLM that we have no idea what's going on with them. We've been tracking the test information pages that teachers are supposed to access. If you remember, we've kind of hit that hopefully pretty hard this year. So we're only at about a 52% of testlets administered that teachers are accessing those. If you look here where this becomes really critical in what we're doing with test administration, it's that in this initial precursor level. That's our testlets at our very bottom basic entry point that are what we call teacher administered, meaning that the teacher is interacting with the student with manipulatives or things that they're supposed to gather off the computer screen, and the teacher's entering their responses. So if teachers are not looking at those test information pages prior to, they have no idea what they're supposed to be gathering up material-wise before they get into the testing session. So that's a problem. 76 LEAs out there. That's a big chunk of y'all have teachers that did not access that. So you do have that report. So this is something we're just going to keep on top of and keep tracking from year to year. Okay, go ahead. Next. So don't forget you have your monitoring dashboard, so you can go in really quickly and kind of get a scope if you think you might be one of those LEAs that have students. You can go into that dashboard and educator portal, click on that, and it'll tell you first contact survey. Do you have students that don't have first contact survey filled out? It can give you kind of just really a high level scope of where you're at and what you've got going. Hopefully we've been kind of looking and tracking that testing outside of hours or short duration stuff. I know some of you have. I've had lots of conversations. We've caught some interesting situations with teachers through this. So just a reminder, those are your dashboard reporting monitoring components. Go ahead, Anne. So you can see where we're at testing progress across the state for ELA. So of our students enrolled, we've got just a little over 71% have completed when they say all the blueprint, meaning they've completed all the testlets that were expected. That orange one there, you can see 20% of our students in DLM for ELA have completed at least one testlet. And then we've got a few lingering students not rostered, students not started testing. So there could be good reasons for that, but there's high level state for ELA. Go ahead, Em. So you can see here's where we're at for math. We're kind of similar. We've got a few more students that have completed math testlets than we have had ELA. 16% have hit that at least one testlet mark. And then those kind of lingering students that we don't have anything done with them yet. Go ahead next. And then you can see where we're at with science. So remember, science, we don't have third grade, so our numbers sit a little bit lower with what we do with science. We start in grade 4. So we don't have 100% completion, which we know we won't. We'll have those, some students that don't participate, but gives you kind of high level where we're at statewide. Okay. Okay, DLM special circumstance codes. So there is a technical assistant document that is on our DLM district coordinator Padlet. That's the one with the cork board. I did update. There was one step in that guidance document that was wrong. So that was brought to my attention. So that's been updated to accurately reflect what to do, but only district test coordinators. So district users, building test coordinators, building users do not have the ability to enter special circumstance codes. Only district test coordinators. So if you've got those students that are expected to test, they're in DLM, our teachers need to submit first contact surveys, that testlet gets delivered, and then you go in and enter that special circumstance code. It has to be done for each subject, ELA, math, and science. So please go ahead and get those done. Your special ed directors do look at why did our students not participate. So it is really good information to kind of tease out what's going on with our kiddos' participation stuff. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so again, this is just kind of high level for you. In Educator Portal, you click on test management, then you go in and you actually click on that student's test session name, and then scroll all the way across to the right, and you'll see where you enter that special circumstance code. To save that, you click the little icon, the save floppy disk icon to the next or to the right of that. Do not click on that bottom save button. That one doesn't work. So that's how you save those special circumstance codes. And then you do have an extract that you can run out of data extracts that gives you all of your students in your special circumstance codes. So if you're wondering if it was saved, you can go in, pull that extract, and see if it's stuck in there. Go ahead. All right, so cleaning up user accounts. So just a reminder, when do we deactivate a user versus remove a user? You want to deactivate that user if that person or teacher is still within your district, but maybe they just don't need access to DLM next year. They don't have kiddos next year that'll be testing. They're taking a different role, but we don't want to completely get rid of them just in case they come back to our world of DLM. So that's when you deactivate them. They still kind of sit in the background for you. You as a district person can come in and see those deactivated teachers, reactivate them on your own. We remove a user when they're no longer with your LEA. Someone's retired, the teacher has moved, and they are no longer within you. Then you can click that remove button. I am the only one, or Marine, state level people are the only ones that can see removed users. So if by chance and this happens, we removed all of our users, help, you can email me. That happened with one of our LEAs this past year. I can help bring those users back to your system. They never fully leave DLM. I'm the only one that can see them, if that makes sense. So just a reminder of how we clean up those user accounts. Okay, go ahead. Okay, download data extract and report. So when the system rolls over that July 1 component, I would maybe do it the last day of June just to be on the safe side. We do not save any of your individual score reports. I do not save any of your district aggregate reports. That is all on you guys to do. So if you go into reports and click on data extracts, you can move through those tabs to see is there anything you want to save. Maybe you want to save your test administration monitoring extract. They come down in CFV files. So anything that is in there that you want to save, you need to do it before July 1. Okay, we don't save any of those for you. All right, next slide. Okay, so those are kind of your to-do lists. Let me know if you see students that I need to help you remove, any of those things. So any questions just kind of on our day-to-day DLM stuff? Awesome. Okay. DLM score report. So let's dig a little bit into what goes on with our score reports. What reporting things do you guys have? And what can we do with all of this? So we do not have automated reporting like we do with our other systems for DLM, but score reports will be available at the very beginning of August. Every single year, all of DLM score reports are loaded into Educator Portal and available to you come the first part of August. The key to this is teachers don't get to see any of the DLM reports until students are rostered to them. But all of your district side users have that. Remember, we have a rule in legislation around school reports need to be out to parents 3 weeks after we receive them. I would suggest by the first parent-teacher conference or by the first IEP team meeting that we have reports in teachers' hands to give to parents. Does that make sense? So you have access to those. What you see here, so as a district, you get a district level aggregate report that gives you high level, what happened with all of our DLM reporting, where were our proficiency levels for students. You then can get a school aggregate report that you can pull down in bundles and give to school teams, class aggregate reports, and then of course you get those student individual reports or you get them bundled. They come down in PDF styles. So if you end up doing a bundled component, you're going to have to task someone with breaking those apart. So I know it can be kind of tedious, but those individual score reports, that's what we do with that. Teacher level reports, so teachers can see once students are rostered to them, anything they do in those benchmarks. They also then, once students are rostered to them, they have access to that student report archive, and they can go back and see DLM score reports for the student that they have all the way back to whenever the student first started taking DLM. So that's what we have available in that reporting piece. Go ahead, Em. Okay, so alternate assessment reports. So this is where you come in and find all of those district level reports. So when you click on the reports tab, when you come back in August, you click on alternate assessment reports in that drop down, you'll see that the very far end tab is that year end. So you can see that list there of all the various bundles that you can grab and get as a district for all your DLM stuff. Go ahead. So your aggregate reports that you can pull as a district, you can pull those down in a PDF format. You also have the opportunity to pull those down in a CSV format as well. So if that becomes something that is a better format for you to work with that data, you get that as well in those district reports. All right, I don't know if you are aware, some of you might be, not be. You also, at the district level, have what is called a GRF. So this is your general research file. So this is actually the same file that we get at the state level that we use to load all of our student DLM reports into accountability. So this is a great file for those of you that may have a system or in your SIS systems where you take all of your assessment scores and upload them into a portal. This comes down in a CSV format. So this is a file that may be of great benefit to you in that way. You access this under Reports Data Extract, and you should go to that year-end tab and see this GRF file that floats within there. And you click on that file and it downloads, and then you'll notice here, I don't know if on the next slide I got deeper into it, you do have some crosswalk documents to support you with what's in what's called that GRF file. It is huge. You get multiple things within that GRF. Thank you. So one of the things that I really want to point you towards that probably is one of the most important for you is in that GRF file, when you download it, you get all of your student, demographic data, all that information, and then you'll get in column AI is labeled performance level. That is your proficiency. So you'll notice here where it crosswalks, and I pulled this screenshot from that crosswalk document that you can download. Go back to page M. So this is what you should be seeing. I don't know if any of you are logged in right now. If hopefully this is what you're seeing under a DTC role when you click on that. But you'll have that data detail and EE crosswalk in there. That data detail explains like what your columns are and the data in your GRF file. So if you go back to that next slide now. So that's your performance level. So you'll notice you'll get a 1 equates to that emerging, 2 is approaching, 3 is target, and 4 is advanced. So you'll notice that's our correlation 1, 2, 3, 4s. So you'll get that 1, 2, 3, 4. If you see a 9, that means that the student didn't test. There's no report for that. At 1 testlet, a student is considered a participant. They will get a score report. It's not going to be valid and reliable off of 3 to 5 questions, but 1 testlet and they're a participant. Okay. All right. So that is some information on your GRF. So that's a file at the district level that's probably pretty useful to you. If you have not done anything with that, I suggest go in, download that before July 1 and look and see what you can do with that. Is there anybody here that's been using that GRF? I know there are because I've walked some people through it. Like, have you guys used it, uploaded it? Has it been beneficial? I'm just curious. I know Maureen does. But I know some of you out there have, because I've done some work with some of you. Okay, all right, next. Okay, individual student score reports. So again, teachers have access to this. Once students are in and rostered, you can go back and look at any individual score report for a student back as far as they've taken DLM. Doesn't matter what district they're at. So teachers do get access to that. What is in an individual score report for DLM is they get that overall performance level for each subject. They get what is called a learning profile, and down to specific skills and essential elements and linkage levels that the student mastered, as well as kind of conceptual areas. So this is information, I've started building this into my DLM trainings the last couple of years and really walking teachers through how to use score reports. I think I've brought this to you guys a time or two. But they do get some valuable information that they can use in those IEP team discussions for kiddos. So next slide. So digging deeper into this individual score report. So each essential element, which is our standard that students are tested at, has what is they call linkage level. So it's got 5 different access points or 5 different levels. Think of that adaptive component. 5 different levels in which students can see test items. So when DLM does its reports, we don't do scaled scores like what you guys are used to in RISE or those other assessments. We look at this overall skills. So students, for example, here, this student saw 8 essential elements in that blueprint to be tested on. And they had the opportunity, if you've got 8 essential elements and 5 linkage levels, that gives us 40 skill sets. They had the opportunity to show mastery, right, amongst 40 skill sets. So in this score report, it will tell you very specifically right here how many skills the student actually mastered out of how many they had the opportunity to show mastery in. The next thing you get is that overall results. So on this score report, teachers won't see a 1, 2, 3, or 4. They see these proficiency buckets, if you will, emerging, approaching target, at target, and advanced. And then I've put here for you how we correlate that. So we correlate that into the 1, 2, 3, 4 proficiency levels that fall in line with what we do with RISE and Utah Aspire Plus. So in order for students to be proficient, in Utah, we draw that line between the 2 and 3. They have to have a 3 or they have to have a 4 to be considered proficient. So next slide. The other thing they come across is this reporting area. So think of this as like a domain. So on this score report, teachers will then say, okay, out of all of these different areas in ELA, math, or science that are essential elements are bundled underneath, how many skills did they master within each of those conceptual areas? So that gives just a little bit more information to teachers, and we really dig into this when I do train your teachers on how we can use this moving into the next year for IEP goals and really thinking about what does that specially designed instruction look like for those kiddos. So this is an area that we really dig into with teachers. I don't think we need to go into that today with you guys, but they do get this kind of then high level in all these sort of domains, if you will. DLM calls them conceptual areas. Where did students really perform? So teachers can maybe target an area that we really didn't show any mastery in here. For example, this that first one, like that might be an area I want to focus that specially designed instruction this year with my standards. Okay, go ahead. And then the next thing teachers get is this learning profile. So this really comes into play and is really beneficial because it will now come in and list, okay, here were all the essential elements that your student was tested on. And then as you move across this learning profile, you'll see these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 columns. Those are those linkage levels, those like access points, if you will, easy, medium, hard. So now teachers get into this map to seeing, okay, back to that original, like we had 40 skills that we could have shown mastery over. Now it maps it out and it tells them like, here's where you actually had mastery for that student in that essential element. What linkage level, right, did the student show those skills? So that's what those green boxes represent. So this is valuable information for the IEP team. One of the components that they're required to do is to craft a present level of academic performance. And so they can see here, like, here's the skills that my students did master in this essential element. And where did we maybe not master those skills? So this really is a great profile. It's really good for parents to kind of get an idea of like, here's the skills that my kids are at. This is what they can do, and here's the areas that we still need to kind of work on when it relates to that, those essential elements. So this learning profile is fantastic for teachers. Okay, go ahead next. Okay, cut points. I brought this to you a couple years ago. So this is a big aha for teachers when we dig into this, because really what they see in that learning profile is they're at like an emerging, approaching target, at target, and advanced. And so I think a lot of teachers have really moved into this space of thinking, well, my students can't show proficiency unless they're at that at target, if you will, sort of linkage level. And that's not the case. So you can see here are the cut points that have been created for DLM, and you'll notice at any grade level and any of those proficiency level buckets, the cut points are never the exact same, even if they're tested on a total same number of linkage levels. So this has been really good for teachers to see, hey, my students, like, they can actually be considered proficient at, if you will, like a 60% mastery, 70% mastery. So there's nothing that says that students have to hit a certain percentage, right, of skills to show that proficiency. So this has been a really great resource for teachers. So as you move through, I've just put up your slides here. Here's our cut points for ELA. And then you'll see cut points for math. Where do we hit those buckets of those breakage between those performance levels? And then science. So this is a great resource for teachers. Go ahead. With that, I've been in the process trying to get approval to go to the next slide. We'll bump ahead. To get a kind of a document standing in place with all of this sort of cut level information. So ta-da, here it is for you. I got this uploaded for you. So all of that information that we just talked about, those cut points explaining how those performance levels equate to our proficiency buckets, is now in a technical assistant document for you. It has been uploaded to both our DLM resource Padlet for teachers, as well as for you guys, that testing coordinator Padlet. If you scroll across your Padlet and find that score reports column in there and scroll all the way down within that, you'll see this new document that you can print out, use, share with assessment directors, and make sure teachers are aware of that so they can really kind of see what are those cut points and figure out, man, how close were we from moving from one performance level, right, or proficiency level to the next. So hopefully that becomes a valuable piece for you guys in looking at what goes on with our DLM score reports. The slide that Em skipped over was just links to resources for you. So there are multiple resources that are also linked in these Padlets for you and teachers. There's a video that DLM has put together that explains how to use score reports. There's a parent interpretive guide in both English and Spanish that teachers can give to parents when they hand over score reports, and then a guide that just helps teachers figure out, how do I talk to parents about DLM score reports to help them kind of understand what's going on. So there are some great resources already out there from DLM available to support what goes on with explaining our score reports to parents. And I believe that is it. So any questions, concerns, anything? And if things come up, I've had some of you come to me before and say, hey, it would be really great if DLM could do this or DLM could do that. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Maureen and I. We do have the opportunity to take enhancements. We actually, in June, will have an ad hoc meeting with state partners around score reports. So if there's anything that you think would be beneficial, we can take that to that consortium. Again, state partners vote. We don't always get our way, but we at least have the opportunity to present our case to states. So if there's anything that you guys need, please let us know. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you, thank you. I know that was a lot of dense information, particularly at the end of the school year. One of the things I wanted to highlight that we've been trying to focus on the last several months since January was there was an audit finding that around assessment and assessment literacy and information. And so one of the things that we've been doing and probably should have highlighted more for you all was that each of the last months that we've been sharing assessment literacy resources, the item type. So I know we got feedback from our, I can't remember if it's last month or in March, AD meeting where we shared all the different item types, going over this data, part of an audit finding to make sure we were sharing our assessment literacy resources that we have that are available, particularly around data analysis. So that's part of why we've been sharing some of these resources since January with our formative assessment toolkit, item types, going over the MAPE data analysis information. So just an FYI, that's why we've been sharing this information and hopefully you'll find it useful. And I know we've gotten some feedback about the length of the meetings and sharing information in specific ways. So that's noted, and thank you for that feedback. And then know that this is why we're sharing information with you all, as well as there was an audit finding specifically to provide data analysis information to people. So let's go ahead and move forward with a break. It's 10:34, so let's do 11 minutes. Let's come back at 10:45 and we'll jump into Acadians.
All right, let's just jump right into Pathways of Progress. So we've had a few people reach out. ALO does offer Pathways of Progress from middle of year to end of year. So I know if you used other systems in the past, you only got a pathway if it was from beginning of year. The student had to have a beginning of year score. ALO does offer pathways for middle of year, so you can see that. But the state report cards and accountability is only going to account for students who have a pathway from beginning of year to end of year. So that middle of year to end of year pathway is beneficial to see. It can help with just looking at analyzing some data. It can be beneficial to see where your students are at. But just know for reporting purposes, we'll still only pull students who have a beginning of year composite score. And I did just kind of include a picture there so you can see the student doesn't have a beginning of year score. It's kind of grayed out. They have a middle of year and an end of year. So that does show that they have a pathway there on the side of the picture. If you could please pass that along to school level administrators, that would be awesome. And I would appreciate that just because we've had a few people reach out noticing that they have pathways for students that don't have a beginning of year score. Any questions about that? All right, so our next slide. So we have had a lot of people reaching out about a pathways discrepancy, noticing that on a goal setting, on the goal setting tool, the goals that are input are showing typical progress. And then after students are assessed, their progress is showing below typical progress. So we are still in the process of having communications with ALO. We recognize that this is causing a lot of heartache, for lack of a better word. We recognize that. We are working with ALO. So what it is right now is that when goals were set at beginning of the year, there was a target date associated with that goal. So say April 7th. And so that's what goal students have been working towards. If students were tested after that date of our example here is April 7th. So if they were tested in May, then it's saying the student has had a couple more weeks of instruction and should therefore be higher than that April 7th goal. So we are working with ALO. We recognize that this has caused a lot of frustrations. ALO is working on sending out some correspondence to us, and as soon as we receive that correspondence, we will email it out to our assessment directors. Jared, is there anything you would like to add with that?
No, that's it. Well, I guess it is happening in the ALO system, so it applies to reading and to math.
Yeah, applies to both. Yeah, and we're seeing it mainly with students who are just right there on the edge of the typical line, so that they're kind of at the below typical. I shouldn't use below because that's going to be confusing, but if they're at like the bottom of making typical growth, then it's affecting, because that's why those 2 to 3 weeks of instruction are just barely tipping it down into the below growth, is because they've had just a little bit more instruction, or the system is assuming they've had a little bit more instruction, which we recognize as frustrating. We were kind of under the impression too that it's supposed to be a window, not necessarily associated with a date. So like I said, we're working with ALO. We're trying to get it figured out. As soon as we get some correspondence from them, we will send it out.
That was one question is with the, as far as the accountability goes, if ALO can't fix it for this year, will we be able to work with accountability team at USBE to make adjustments to those, to that median window that they provided?
That is an excellent question. Sid, do you have any ideas?
So as far as accountability, the only place that Acadians is used for accountability is on the school report card under the reading on grade level section. And that's calculated. We have business rules in place already calculated that removes students that haven't been in the LEA for 160 or 65 days. And there's all the business rules around how that's calculated. So that's set and has been the same. So that wouldn't change. And that's based off of those business rules that we've had in place and what has been presented for years. The difference, I think, with what's happening in ALO is that if teachers had an indication all year long that they were getting to a certain point and then they got to that point and then they actually have not quite made typical progress, it's showing something misleading, reporting separately than what's going to be on the school report card. School report card, though, is at an aggregate level, not at a student level. So that's looking at the school as a whole, like the school report card right now is only first through third grade students that's being reported on the school report card. And so it would be that aggregate. It rolled all into that one piece on that accountability measure.
It said it could impact little A accountability, early learning plan. Correct. So if it's modifying those students who are achieving typical growth in math, and that could impact our ability to achieve growth goal, right? Because we're held accountable for both literacy and math, that 60% of our kids relate that to typical or better growth. So how does this impact that?
What can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so I think from my understanding, the discrepancy is between the tool that's available for teachers to utilize to kind of get an idea. We don't at a state level use that tool at all. That's just, here's a visual for teachers to get an idea. I'm going to put some goals in and work with my students, and we're going to try and hit this goal. And then what's happening is, at least the example that was shared with me, is you put in the student score, so that the EOI composite score, they put those in that teacher goal setting tool, and it shows it's typical, student made typical progress. But you look in the student list, and there's that icon out to the right, and you look at that icon and it shows that this student is below typical progress. And so rightfully so, teachers are like, their expectation, hey, this student made typical growth. We use this tool throughout the year. And then I look at what's showing in the student list, and it's showing below typical. And that's frustrating for the teachers, but but as far as accountability, we're taking whatever that student list is. We're not utilizing the the goal setting tool. But again, that could be frustrating because if the student list is showing below, but you're, for a while, you're expecting students to be typical, and that's kind of that cutoff point. I think it's more the frustration of expectations and also the alignment of you're providing a tool for me that's not helping, like causing more frustration than support and help.
Just to clarify, sorry, go ahead, Evan. Just to clarify, the issue right now is only impacting the goal-setting feature within ALO. It is not impacting the official composite score.
Correct. It's impacting the visual that teachers are seeing, but not the actual scores.
So the data file we download to Excel, that one's going to be the student lists representation of pathways of progress.
Correct.
Okay, then I'm less concerned.
And just to connect it with what Dallas was saying and adding to that, Adam, is the goal setting tool, when the student takes that first BOY, then it calculates that date at the end, and that date is what's causing this issue within the goal setting tool. And so we're waiting on information from Acadience on opportunities to change that date or how we can work with that to make it not do what it's doing.
The line more with the actual end of the year.
Yeah, that's helpful.
I'm concerned it's not impacting the official.
Yeah.
And then just pulled up the example student event sent you, and on the list, they are good.
Good.
So that's good.
The goal setting tool never has had any impact on the student's actual achieved, right? That's just to give an idea for teachers and students to have those conversations of this is what my student needs to do to make this much growth. But that doesn't have any impact of how the student actually performs. It's just a tool to use. So as a teacher, you know where your students need to get by the end of the year. Emily, was there a question online?
There's a few questions online. First off, is setting a goal required for all students?
No.
No. Okay.
So it's not required for all students, but you would want to set a goal for those students that you're progress monitoring. I think to progress monitor, you have to set a goal. No, you don't have to. Okay.
You don't have to. Again, it's just a good
It sets them up.
resource. Yeah,
And
it does
it's
set it
defaulted
automatically.
to setting a goal.
Yeah,
What we have found though with goal and progress monitoring is if a teacher lowers a goal, then that can impact what your progress monitoring status report looks like.
correct, because it creates, when you set those goals, it creates an aim line on your pathways of progress.
Yeah,
So you
goal
can-
aim line.
Yeah, so you can see that aim line. So if the goal's more intensive, that aim line is going to be more steep, versus if a teacher lowers that goal, it's going to be a little bit more baseline, and then you can compare the progress monitoring to those aim lines.
Are schools also required to share Acadience scores within 3 weeks, like with the other assessments? Asking as a parent. Smiley face.
Yes, smiley face.
That would be yes-ish. We have had people who have asked, like in the fall, hey, our parent-teacher conferences are 4 weeks out. Can we share these results at parent-teacher conference, or do we have to wait? And we've had more flexibility with that.
Is it possible that the actual pathway is incorrect, or just that the goal wasn't correctly reflecting where the student would end up?
It's that the goal wasn't correctly reflecting according to the date that was tested. So the actual pathway is correct, just like on the student list, just like what Jared was saying. The actual pathway is correct on the student list. Is that the goal was going off of one date when we were under the assumption that it was a window of dates.
The student list is going off of the April 7th goal. If the students tested within the testing window and tested later than others of their peers, they do not have an equal chance to make progress according to pathways.
So that is what we're saying with the date that's associated with it, because if they were tested later than April 7th, then it's saying that student should have received more instruction. So therefore they should be higher than that April 7th date, because a child who was tested on April 1st received less instruction than a child who was tested on April 10th. And so it's trying to base it just on that one date and time. So if the student had been tested on April 7th, which I totally recognize is not realistic to test all of your students on one day, but if the student had been tested on April 7th, they would have made typical growth. But because they were tested after, they should have received more instruction. So that's what we're working with ALO right now, is because none of us in this room or online, none of us recognized or knew that there was a date associated with that. And that's the problem, is that we didn't know there was a date associated. We were under the assumption that it was a window of time. So that's what we're trying to work with ALO right now to get adjusted.
And then just a follow-up comment from before, the system will automatically set a goal, but it is not always a realistic goal.
So that's why I'd say it's not required, but I would strongly suggest you go in and look at goals and adjust them to meet individual student needs.
Are the visual scores we are seeing through ALO right? Or should we be using the downloaded data file?
Be the same.
They're
Should be the same?
Yeah, they should be the same.
They're the same, okay. Almost there.
If they're not,
If they're not, please say something.
If they're not, that's a whole other problem.
Okay, I don't think the pathway is correct for all students because when the data is adjusted, the pathway adjusts.
Correct, because if you so say your school started on August 1st, if you go and change those dates to September 1st, that's 4 weeks less of instruction that the student would have received. So on that April 7th date, again, if you move that window, it's saying the student had less instruction.
Okay, and then the last one, is the communication to ALO to just set one date? What is the plan to remedy this?
That's what we're working with ALO right now on. They have to go back and talk with their researchers and their data and statistics team to see if this is something that can be changed and adjusted. So we're in the process of talking with ALO and trying to get that worked out.
And I think what we're leaning towards is, since it's a window, trying to make that date the last day of the window.
Okay, that's it.
Please know that we recognize the frustrations. We are in the exact same boat. We're feeling the same way. So just please know that it's valid. We recognize the frustrations and we're trying to do what we can to fix this.
Thank you. I agree with Jared.
Validation.
40.
Next slide, please. Let's move on. Okay, so we have some Reading Essentials courses coming up this summer. You can register for those on Midas. This is for anyone who will be new to giving the benchmarks. So if you would like to register and come do one of those courses with me, please do so on Midas, and you can see those dates listed there. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Next slide. This one's you, Jared.
Yeah, mine's not as complete as Dallas's. I have a link in there. I'm trying to figure out math trainings for the summer and this next year, and I'd like some input. It's not, it's more just an estimate of like, what are we thinking? Because I can pick random days throughout the summer and hope that things work out, but if I had a little bit more information, that might be helpful. So just wondering, the survey just has just information about, how many people are you expecting that will need to be trained this summer? who are going to be new to Acadians, whether they've moved down into the K-3 space or they're new to the district or the charter school. So just if you have a chance and you can fill out that survey, I'd appreciate it. It has, I think, it has 4 questions. And then I'll plan to get out information to assessment directors related to Acadians math training once I have some ideas that way. And then also we do have the Canvas course for test administration and scoring. That's available. I will be updating it and have a new link for you the end of June at the assessment director meeting in June so that you can share that. I update it each year just because that allows me to kind of track the certificates and the completion from people. So that's why I do that, just to be able to better track who's attending and get those certificates. Next slide. And then one other thing, this has been shared, this is more of a reminder, but for next year, those of you who used ALO, we're just assuming you're going to use ALO for the next year for Acadians math. Excuse me. If that's not the case, if you're wanting to go back to ADM, please let me know. And then those LEAs who are using ADM this year, I've been in contact with them on whether they want to stay with ADM or they want to move to ALO for next year. One other thing that just to add to this slide, because I'm thinking about it, is this is the last year on the contract for Acadians math. We will be having to go through the RFP process for this next year. So the contract ends June of 2026.
Just a quick question for clarification. The state is purchasing licenses for K through 3, correct?
Yes.
For Acadians math, and for reading, it's K-6.
As long as 6 is in an elementary setting.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we're good to keep going.
Thanks, Pete. I finally get to share some good news during this meeting. So the PEEP platform is now up and working. Teachers can see their classrooms on PEEP. I've had some feedback from some other LEAs saying that it is working accurately. I will say there has been some small issues with rostering, which again, our IT team is working on. If you have problems with rostering though, just email that over to me, Dallas. I can help with that one. But PEEP classrooms are working. Please let your preschool personnel know of this update just in case they haven't checked recently. So those people who sent me emails, I did try to reply to them, letting them know that it's working, but just in case, if you could forward this communication along to your preschool personnel.
And if you send me emails about PEEP rostering, I just forward them to Dallas because it's the one thing I don't take care of. So skip a step and you can just email Dallas about it.
Thank you.
All right, friends, for RISE, just as a reminder, last month in our April AD meeting, I provided a slide with page numbers and various manual references for how to complete your data cleanup. In today's, I also included a link to the training that was held earlier in the year to where I even timestamped for you, where I start talking about the data cleanup. Couple of things. I reminded you of this last month. I'm going to remind you again because somehow someone's going to surprise Maureen and I next week and say that they can't do their data cleanup because their kids are all exited and everyone has disappeared. Please don't exit your students until your participation codes have been entered. You will save yourself a headache and you will save Maureen and I emails because all we can do is smile. You're the one who has to fix it. With that, all of your cleanup does need to be complete by close of business on June 13th, but many of you will have that done prior to that because your school year will have ended prior to that, which means your students will have exited prior to that. So don't use that as your day because you feel like you have lots of extra time. shoot for your cleanup being complete before your students exit the systems. Also on that same note, because it still happens every year that we get out of school or courses end, and then Maureen and I get lots of emails because nobody can see their reporting anymore. Somehow everything has disappeared. But they haven't. You now just have to go back and click 24-25 school year because that year is over. So now it's all previous data. It is not current data. So message that to your school administrators and to your teachers, because they all are going to start to log in and want to see reports. And as soon as your school year ends, it becomes previous, and then they get nervous because things are gone.
It takes me a couple times before I remember that too.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you get in the habit of at the end of the year and you forget when it rolls around the next year. A reminder of the rules. If student checked into school last week, most of the testing is done. Do we test the student? April 15th, I believe, is the day.
That's for entering the country.
That's entering the country. If they've been here, you need to continue testing and ensure that it was completed. The nice thing with that is if they have completed it with their previous school, it will show in Tide for you, so you can see what has been completed and what hasn't. If they are not previously a Utah school student, Scott, when do you want them to cut off their?
If they've received instruction, absolutely, we should test them. If they haven't received instruction, testing's of no use there, right?
It shouldn't count against you in your accountability if they've only been your student for a week. So.
Okay. For ISRs, it's been mentioned already, but we're going to reiterate it here as well. When you complete your RISE testing, your ISRs are immediately there. This is not one that you have to wait for. You can immediately start to generate those ISR reports and get them disseminated to parents and families. You do still have that 3-week window, but if this is the first time you're hearing it, ELA and writing ISRs are great. Okay, you won't see those in there. Math and science, those are going to go out as soon as you get them. You can send them today. Your ELA ones, you're going to hold off and send those probably in October or November within the 3-week window of when those reports become available. I only say it because we're still getting calls and emails from your beloved teachers and school administrators who have no idea that they're not going to see them. So keep messaging it, and we will continue to do the same. Yes, you're not the only one who's had to give the reminder.
Yeah, good question. So
Yes.
ISRs right now, we don't have to wait till your final report in August to send out. Is that our 3-week window, or is our 3-week window? What's our 3-week window?
Your 3-week window for RISE is when your window closes. So at your window close date, whether that's May 28th, June 6th, whatever you have it set, you have 3 weeks beyond that for your RISE
So we
ones.
don't need to wait for the August, like everything's
No.
good.
No,
Okay.
not for RISE. You're good to go.
There's 3 questions in here.
Oh,
All right,
that's
let's
done.
see. Remind me the rule, are they coded as 101 in the case of recent move-ins? Amanda, only if they have received instruction but are not taking the test. What if they are previous Utah students? Some of our schools have 4 days left, jamming for testing. Same thing, if they were a previous Utah student and have been receiving instruction, they would be coded as a 101 not taking the test. If they were not and have transferred in from somewhere else and we have no record of instruction for what our tests would be, then you can use you want them to use 111?
Yeah, I just want to look.
Okay, this is your umbrella approval if a student has just transferred from out of state.
I think, just quickly though, one of the considerations is you want to establish a baseline for growth. Right, as part of that decision.
It is super helpful. Looking for code recent move-ins. Yeah, definitely. There's not a code for recent move-ins. I can't believe how many reminders I've had to give. Yeah. Because adults are a lot like our students. We all need reminders. I thought we were not supposed to test the last week of school due to so Selena, it is definitely recommended to not test the last week of school, but we do recognize that there are circumstances when that becomes a necessity. And if you need that approval, you can reach out to Scott and I, and we can work with you. Basically, all that has to happen is you have to go in and adjust your school testing window so that it still remains available for the student to complete it. But we would ask, as we have in years past, that if you are testing a student the last week of school for whatever the extenuating circumstance would be, to ensure that they are not missing the activities and the celebrations that are happening, because that's why they come. And we want our students to be able to participate in those. And so as long as they're not missing out on some of those types of activities, you can test them the last week of school. But again, this is an extenuating circumstance. This is not general testing window. This is not testing all of your 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students because you wanted to make sure that they got the most instructional time. This is really reserved. If you're testing the last week of school, it is reserved for certain circumstances that are kind of outside of the control of the student. If a student has been absent for school for 3 weeks, is the code did not test? Yes, Catherine, they would just be a 101. Absent, did not test. I have also included on this slide guidance, the spot in the TAM where it explains how to generate the ISRs. Just also remember, when we get the new rubrics and things in place for the writing test, all of that will also be updated in the upcoming school year. So I will provide that to you when it becomes available. I do have RISE Secure Browser updates for you. If you are doing any Windows desktop supporting systems, your secure browser is 18.0 to replace 17. That is going to go live June 10th, so you can start updating as soon as that occurs on that day. There is going to be an enhancement for the secure browser specifically designed for Windows ARM devices, but that exact date of availability has not been determined yet, so just kind of stay tuned for that, and I'll provide it for you when it becomes available. When it comes to Chrome, there is going to be a progressive web app version available for the upcoming school year. More info is going to be available soon. They shared a little bit with us at our planning meeting just this week, but it's not quite ready for dissemination for you. However, the current kiosk app for Chrome is going to remain valid for the school year, but only if you are running version 138. Okay. The new PWA is going to require you to start from version 139 and will then be supported on all Chrome OS versions moving forward until further notice. When it comes to Utah Aspire Plus reporting, you've had your student detail reports available roughly within 24 hours of completion, but there still has been some questions about when you see do not report. That just means that students didn't complete the 85% attemptedness requirement to receive a score. And I know that this causes frustration to your teachers because they are looking at it going, but they completed 70% of the test. I want to be able to see a score. And we recognize that. And I would love to tell you that that is an option, but it's just not, because psychometrically, we have been told that they have to complete up to 85% to allow for that ACT predictability piece. So we get it? Minimum 85%, not up to. Minimum 85% completion. Okay. Is there a way to pull bulk ISRs for Utah Aspire Plus? Del Rey, I am working on sending you an email, but they're not available yet anyway. But it is in the TAM. You go and read it. It's in there. But don't try until, as you look on the slide here, they're not available until May 23rd. And I've had people reach out and wonder why they're not. And it's because there's always the delay with the ISRs with Utah Aspire Plus, but you are getting them still significantly earlier than you have in years past, because for many of you, you are still even in school on May 23rd to be able to pull those. Those will also be available with your test scores data file and the test events data file. The parent portal will be available June 3rd, where parents can then also go and access the ISR in that digital format. The ISR is going to look a little bit different than it has in the past, only because there's not an English score. Okay, it still looks very similar. There's still a composite scale score with that predicted ACT range. There's still predicted ranges for all of the subject areas and their scale scores. There's still a proficiency level, but there's not factoring in an English test. So that component is no longer included. And my last piece of information for you is that LTI, our vendor for the Apple test, is no longer. An RFP went out for our new for the dual language immersion assessment, and Avant, I don't know how it's said. Sorry. That is the new vendor for the dual language immersion assessment, and the assessment is the STAMP assessment. From what I can gather at this point, and I have the only information I've gotten is from Google. So take that with a grain of salt that it comes with. One of the differences between the Apple test and the STAMP test is the STAMP test is adaptive, where the Apple test was not. There will be two different forms. Carl Bowman, our dual language immersion specialist, has a little bit more information, but this is going to be new for all of us, so get excited. That's all I know about it, though, so don't ask me too many more questions. Fabulous. Salt Lake says that they have a school using it and they like it, so that's awesome. This will take place in October, by the way. This was not like we're going to do Apple and then it's sunsetting. It will be the STAMP test in October when that window opens for the dual language immersion assessment. Is Brittany back or is Brittany not back?
She is not back?
Okay, so me and Scott are going to talk about these things.
We're gonna try. Set an appointment. Okay, she's busy.
So for a reminder from our March meeting, in APAC, it was decided that if you have students who are accelerating through math, that they only needed to take one of the tests, the required and preferred being that second level. So for example, if you had a student who was taking Math 7 and Math 8 during one school year, they would no longer need to complete the Math 7 test and they could complete the Math 8 test. And that was all well and good until some of them didn't finish the coursework for Math 8. So if that's the case, if the lower level test was taken, like the Math 7 one, you're good to go. And you can use participation code 111 for the higher test because the coursework was not complete. If the coursework was complete, they still have to take it. They will have 2 RISE tests, and data and statistics will work their magic so that only the higher level course counts. Okay. I feel like the rest of that is all review. So we're probably good there.
It is.
Okay, perfect.
On purpose.
So Elise, that 111 needs approval. Is this your verbal approval that we can do that for those?
Yeah, oh, it sure is. Thank you. If you have others, you send those to Scott. Off to Elise.
Not to Elise. Elise gets too much already.
There is another problem though here where if students are enrolled in 2 math courses or an accelerated one in a single year and they don't take that, but are also not completing the higher level course by the end of the year, we have to take into account what this means for accountability because you didn't issue them the Math 7 test, assuming they were going to finish Math 8 and then didn't. You have a couple of choices for this year and this year only because we're going to revamp it and make it better. New one here. So your choices are, if the student didn't participate in either test, the lower or the higher, you will either have to code them as 101 or re-roster them for that lower level test and get it done. Those are your 2 choices. But we'll have something better in place.
Go back to that other one because there is an impact if they do 101.
Oh, yes.
There is.
Okay. Because the code is countable for accountability, because the student was enrolled and eligible but did not test. So just be aware of that, okay? So if you're coding them 101, you have an accountability piece to be aware of. And then, or like I said, or you re-roster them real fast for that lower level, call them down and have them take it.
And that does impact this year specifically because this is a CSI calculation year, so it could impact CSI designations. If you have a significant number of students that would be counted as a non-participant.
I'm going to do that this year, so okay.
Go ahead, So if an LEA hasn't met the federal accountability requirement of that 95% participation rate, again, the accountability score is going to be impacted. But like I said earlier, there is going to be an update in coding, which I think it's Maureen that understands what that's actually going to look like and has more understanding than I do for next year, so that we don't run into the same issue again.
Here's your reason to come to next month's AD meeting, because I'm going to talk about.
There's your cliffhanger. Are you giving your course codes for that next month?
Yes, Kristen
Okay.
has latest new work.
Okay.
Fun stuff.
Yay. So if there's questions, let us know, because we are here to help you. But we might not have all the answers and we'll have to go somewhere else to get them.
Which we will do.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. And I didn't think there could be any ACT updates. I had a phone call with ACT yesterday. And so here's a little short ACT update having to do with unlisted school testing centers. So we have 3 schools that have not replied back to ACT to set up their UTC. And they're listed here: Weaver Innovation, Riverton High, and Terra Academy. You check your spam folders. Whoever the contact person is there needs to respond to ACT to set that up. All the other schools have that asked for it, and they're all, looks like it's going well there. But those 3 schools, ACT has reached out repeatedly to that contact person and have been getting ghosted for whatever reason. And if they're not going to do it, if they change their mind, great. At least let ACT know so they're not, beating up against the dead wall to try to get that set up. And so, and I think that's all I got. Testing's gone really well as far as I can tell by my unofficial numbers that I look at. Joey's tested maybe about 100 more students this year than last year. And the scores across the board look like they're up. And usually we get like a little dip, maybe English or math will dip a little, but never science, of course. But the score's looking up, but I am going to get the embargoed official results next month. And we'll be releasing those probably in July once the embargo ends, so you can see the across the state results also. So those are coming up on the usual deadlines that we've got. And I'm still coordinating with ACT to get a sneak peek at those embargoed results at the end of June. Other than that, I think that's all I got. Just questions, and if you have any questions, reach out. I'm just waiting. That's the last one, as far as I know. There's no more slides. We're done early, half hour early.
However, I just got an email.
Stop it.
Shocked by this? No, I'm not either. From RISE, the TIDE team is working on a solution for those of you who have the duplicate error on your discrepancy reports. They're showing that random second science test for, we're going to call them the lucky group of students who won the prize this year. Because it's not happening to everybody, but it is happening for an unknown reason to a selection of students. They have just reached out that they seem to have an answer. They are working on that resolution. I will provide more, I'm hoping by next AD memo that goes out Tuesday, either that it's fixed for you or at least have a date for you for when it is fixed. Bryce, will Cambium have exited students out of TIDE before our last day of school, May 23rd?
Yes, they're pulling the trigger on the manual fix for that tomorrow. Don't freak out if you get there Monday and it hasn't gone all the way through. But next week, we should be seeing all of those students gone.
Awesome.
And George, who do we need to notify of staffing changes on our end for assessment? Please notify Sandra and myself so that we can make sure that 1, you get added to the assessment director list, and 2, you can get access, or the new person can get access to move it or whatever else they need. So just send Sandra and I an email and we can get you updated.
And thank you, George, for that note. Congratulations on your retirement. I know we have a couple of people that are retiring this year or moving on to different endeavors, and we just really have appreciated working with all of you this year and for many years for many of you. Appreciate the partnerships that we've had with all of your LEAs and with you personally, and congratulations for those who are retiring or moving on to other positions, and we wish you the best. So thank you all for being here for the meeting today. Please, again, if you have other feedback on ways that we're sharing things or things that you'd like to have us share with the group, where we always appreciate that feedback, and reach out if you have questions. So thanks again for attending today, and we'll talk to you soon.